Oh, absolutely.
Welcome, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Happy to have everyone here tonight. We have a long agenda, so we're going to get started and try to move along quickly, but accommodate everyone who would like to have public input and who is giving some of the reports this evening. We will begin with roll call, and tonight we have Dale Hansen, Business Manager, Terry Rhodes, excuse me, Board Member, Jeff Nielsen, Board Member, Alan Grunig, Board Member, I'm Kathy Christiansen, Board Member, Roger Pulsifer, Board Member, Steve Norton, Superintendent, Randall Bagley, Board Member, and Larry Jepson, Board Member. Okay, I just did the hardest part of the whole meeting. Remember everybody's names. And we'd like to start with our pledge and with our mission statement, and we will be led by Terry Rhodes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And we will go ahead and grab the public input sign in, and we will do that first. And if you have seen a copy of the agenda, after we get done with our action agenda, we are going to move up number 9 on the reports, which is the middle school 7-8 course and academic requirements, to number 1. So those of who have come from that do not have to sit and wait for everything else. Okay, thank you. Okay. We have 5 people who would like to have public input, and I will give you the guidelines, which are on our website. And are they printed on this, Dale? This one doesn't have them on, the guidelines. Did one of those have it? Oh, okay. So let me tell you what they are. You will have 3 minutes. Oh, okay. Read the guidelines. I won't repeat them. There they are. But the important thing is that you have 3 minutes.
Remember, we were going to have the presentation if it was just the public input on number 9. If that's what they want to do, we wanted to go ahead and do the
That
number
first?
9 and have it after, if that's
So-
okay.
Okay, so we just reverse?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm learning my job still. We're going to put off the public input for a minute while we go ahead and approve the consent agenda. So, I will take a motion from the board to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
Any discussion on any of the items on the consent agenda? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote to approve or not.
Okay, all the votes read and they're unanimous.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to the action agenda, Greenville North Park boundary change, and that will be presented to us. Do we do the action first?
Yeah, let's do number 9.
Next?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and have, all right, make sure I'm doing this right, Superintendent. We'll have the public input
Yeah.
and then the presentation.
Presentation, then public input.
Okay.
Let me just explain why we're doing that. Public input usually takes place at the beginning of the meeting. Since we haven't even discussed the item as a board and superintendent, it hasn't even been presented to us. So we would like to hear the presentation, like the public to hear the presentation, then everybody will be on the same page knowing what the recommendation is. We think your comments will be more germane at that point, and we think the board might have time to have already had a discussion, and their comments might change what you say. So I think it's a better way to do it, because nobody really, except for the committee who met, has even heard this proposal. So this was supposed to be a study session item, and we didn't get a chance to have that without first having it get out and start getting discussed. So that's what we're going to have Mike
Okay.
fill us in.
All right, thank you. All right, so we will go ahead and Mike.
Okay, it's good to get some people out to the board meeting, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't want that many people, but that's okay. I'm going to give a little basic information here, and then I'm going to turn the time over to Tim, and he will give more detail in the recommendation. But to begin with, the state board, we know that the state board approved a new 7-8 course requirements, electives, and that was passed a little over a month ago. Well, I was driving back today from Mountain Crest. I was listening to KSL, and even today on the radio, they were talking about this, that there's still more discussion being provided to the state board about the 7-8 course requirements.
They had a public hearing last night.
They had the public hearing, and still there's no comment or decision by the board. Well, I called Terrell Warner on my way in. I said, Terrell, what is going on? I thought this is passed and this is law. She said, yes, it passed on the third reading with a vote of 9-6. Okay, so why are we still talking then? Why is there still more public input or something coming at the state level? So we know where that is right now at the state level. So what we did as a district about 3 weeks ago, because we know that schools start preparing and considering course options and what will be offered in December, January to get booklets printed and prepared by February to where they can start registering students. And so we're just on a timeline here to where sooner or later we need to present to the board a recommendation on what we feel like should happen with 7th and 8th grade. So that's the beginning. Now, when we did meet about 3 weeks ago, we had the district curriculum specialists, Tim, myself, and the 3 middle school principals, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about the intent of what the state board had passed. And Tim will get into the detail with that. But what we did do is there was 2 things we wanted to accomplish when we were in that meeting with that group. Number one is, now that we've completed our transition as a district to K-6 elementary, 7-8 middle schools, and 9-12 high schools, we needed to update our current publication on what we're listing for middle schools, because now we are all trimester and we're not a mix between a trimester and a semester. So first objective was update what we look like. We're now trimesters in 7th and 8th grade. The second was to, based on the new board policy, the state board policy, determine our recommendation to the board. And we knew when we started this process that there was going to be some discussion. We knew that. So this is the beginning of the discussion. We'll provide to you why we're thinking the way we're thinking, and then we take it from there based on board guidance after that. Now, I put down 3 guiding principles when we had our meeting about 3 weeks ago. And the first one was to follow along with the intent of the state board was to provide more parent choice. That was very obvious in what the state board was doing with that. In the past, we have been very prescriptive, really quite limiting in our middle schools on electives. We really have. And so we tried to open that up just a little bit if there was a possibility for that to happen. The second one was consider our SAGE results and to address any academic needs that we have based on SAGE results. Well, if you look at our SAGE results, there's a trend in our district, and it hasn't just been 1 year, it's been several years, in areas where we need to improve in our SAGE, in our assessments in the middle school level. And the third one was we need to prepare our middle schools for DLI, because that's beginning next year. How are we going to make that happen? And because we've always been addressing in our middle schools because of the limited electives. If you're a band or an orchestra student, you take that and that's it. You're done. You have no electives. We've been that prescriptive. So we took and there's two things that helps us out on electives. One is you go to a trimester, frees things up a little bit, because now 2 trimesters is equaling what is a typical 1 credit type course. And so we have to take a look at how will DLI work in our middle schools. And so when Tim starts to explain to you now a little bit of our rationale, you'll start to see why we're thinking this way. Now I'm going to invite Tim up here to start that. I'm going to give you a handout, and I think Tim will give you one too. But what you're going to see on this handout, and I'll pass it around to you, it's going to show a 7th and 8th grade schedule with the courses that we've recommended here and how we lined it out and how many electives then are left for a 7th and 8th grade student. And right now, based on this recommendation, I'll give them 4 electives. In the past, they've had 3, and that's it. Okay, so this is what we were trying to accomplish when we were getting together as a committee about 3 weeks ago. So I'll pass this out. Tim, I'll have you come up.
You want to put a copy of that on the overhead?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to make this as simple as possible, but it may take.
A little closer to that mic.
You turn. Is that okay?
It's not,
Is it on?
is it on?
I think it was on. It's not coming across.
Kick it up.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
All right, so I'll try to keep this as simple as possible, but I wanted to bring up one thing first. When I started work for Skyview High School, it's been 11 years ago, as a newly minted assistant principal, I got some very sage advice from the principal at that time. He said, just remember when you have a parent in front of you that they can only see their own child, and they're a mother bear or a father bear, and they're protecting that child. And they may not see everything, and that's their job, is to take care of their kid. And that was wise advice. That helped me on many occasions to just remember the perspective of a parent. Well, tonight, I think we've got a lot of parents out in the audience, but they're not parents of children. They're parents of a curriculum that they care deeply about. And so many of you have gotten some emails, and so have I, and I've tried to respond to each of those individually just to let them know. And I think it's important that they're here and let their voices be heard tonight on what they care about. So Mike was correct. We did meet, and let me just explain the committee to you. We had, well, he mentioned that. We had 3 middle school principals on that committee. We don't have a district social studies specialist, but 2 of the 3 principals are former social studies teachers. So we felt like we had good coverage on all of the subject areas as we met. And Mike has mentioned our goal was to, the goals that we had as a group, and was to kind of try to honor what the state school board had done, but at the same time preserve some things that we thought were important as a district. And so we were seeking some consensus on that from all involved. And by the time we left the meeting, we were all on the same page. We went through line by line what we were recommending to you tonight. I'm going to show you just a little graphic really quick. I want you to understand something. That's what one of our middle school curriculums look like currently, and they're all very similar. This is South Cache. A little bit difficult to see, but it's got English, math, arts, the electives, world languages, science, social studies. There's a lot more courses on there than what is represented on this policy. This policy only covers what we're recommending as required courses moving forward, and recommended what we're required by the state to offer as electives. That's the only courses on there, but it does not reflect the full curriculum that we offer at our middle schools, which are in the form of electives that students can take. And there's quite a number in the arts, in world language, and then you see the electives column across the side there. So that's kind of important to keep in mind. Another important thing to keep in mind is the old policy dealt with 6-7 centers, which were on a semester system. Mike mentioned that. And so they had courses that were a full semester long, 2 quarters, which went for half of the year, and then the other half of the year was the other semester. Whereas in our 8-9 centers, they were on a trimester system, a little longer class periods, and they went for over 3 trimesters. So that shift of where we're at now is all of our secondary schools are on trimester systems. And so I think teachers' concerns are, if you only have 2 trimesters instead of a full year class, then the instructional minutes might be long. If you were in a 7th grade the year before, they may be longer, but if you were in an 8-9 center and you drop back to 2 trimesters, you're losing some instructional time if you shorten that. I think that's what the main concern is tonight. So if you look on the policy there, on top is the required courses, and the language arts 7, mathematics 7, integrated science 7, Utah history in the 7th grade are what the state recommends as required courses. The committee recommended that we, in addition to that, add a reading extension, healthy lifestyles, which is PE, and that we put the college and career readiness, which is a new class, up into that grouping, and that as a district, we deviate from what the state has recommended and keep those courses, which have traditionally been required courses, in the mix, except for the college and career readiness is a new set of courses.
Jim, put this one back up.
Okay.
College and career readiness had been a 3 trimester class, and our recommendations take it back to only a 2 trimester class.
Okay, and then in the 8th grade, language arts again, mathematics, integrated science, U.S. history are listed as required courses by the state, and we kept healthy lifestyles, digital literacy, and added a writing extension. That writing extension has been happening at Spring Creek already. It was just added to North Cache and South Cache, and I think that's a point of concern there as well with regards to the U.S. history. So in the case of social studies, if you go back to the 7th grade, the Utah history, which would have been taught over a semester, is being cut back to a trimester, but the instructional minutes went up a little. I didn't do an analysis to see what the overall instructional minutes, but I would guess that there would be a little bit of concern on curriculum coverage there. And then, as mentioned, the U.S. history was recommended to drop from 3 to 2 trimesters, which in a trimester system, 2 trimesters is supposed to reflect a full year course, and although they've lengthened out some of them. So any questions that the board has at this point?
The class period time has gone from how long time?
Okay, if you were at an 8-9 center last year, it stayed the same.
Okay.
So 51, 52 minutes, would that be correct? And if you were at a 6-7 center last year, your classes would have been about 44, 45 minutes. So you're getting about 6 more minutes a day. So,
Is that for 7th grade? 6 more minutes a day than they had before?
yes,
Yes.
yes, correct.
I have a question about the reading extension and writing extension classes. Are those remedial type classes?
No, they are additional classes, and the principals may be able to speak to this much better than me, but they are intended to be additional classes. Here's another piece of information. At the 6-7 centers, students used to take 2 language arts classes all the way through. That's correct? So they had 2 semesters of English, 2-hour in 2-hour blocks. So they doubled up all the way through. So if you taught at a 7th grade last year in our old configuration, you're dropping back. And so those teachers had a concern, how do I cover everything I used to cover in language arts? And so there was quite a bit of discussion on our committee of they wanted more English rather than less, and we kind of trimmed them back a little bit. So, and that was a point of concern as well.
Well, personally, in my own experience, I would rather do more reading and writing in a history class than another English class, which is what this looks like.
I agree, because you've got different type of writing in the history class than you would have in the language arts class. So it would be more informational type of writing, where in the language arts class, you would be able to add, or maybe not even add, but continue to do your descriptive, your narrative, your report, your autobiographical types of writing there, supplemented by the
Social studies curriculum.
writing, which would be 2 different types of emphasis on the writing.
And you ought to be aware also that when the Common Core came into existence, the Utah Core several years ago, writing was highly emphasized, should be a part of social studies as well. In fact, there's several standards in the core that relate to having writing in the social studies core.
And how well does our district do on that? Do the social studies teachers teach writing?
Okay, this is your turn.
Okay.
Also on the SAGE testing in the English section actually asks questions about the American Revolution, Native Americans, and the science curriculum. And it's all based around the middle school core on the SAGE testing.
Okay.
Something else you should be aware of as well is the state just released this year, 2017, a whole new set of standards for the social studies core. And our teachers in our district have, probably some of them went to some summer classes, but I'm not sure they've fully digested, we've fully digested as a district that new social studies core.
We did get copies of that.
Yeah, I know
they
somebody brought
So we've got that.
There was all of Ridgeline's department.
Tim, excuse me, could we get the mic and pass out to them
Oh,
so they could hear that?
There were 2 of the 8th grade teachers who went down to the state core training this summer. And we went through, and based on what we did with that training, and it was a lot on critical thinking and writing, we went through and did our scope and sequence with the other 8th grade teachers from the state. And in our scope and sequence, which we are working on in our PLCs, I do not see how we can get through all of the core and all of the writing that's included in the core in 2 trimesters. And that's because we went to the training.
Okay, thank you. So what would be your alternative to this if we, say, had Utah history be 2 trimesters and U.S. history be 3 trimesters? How would that change? Would it just change the electives that the students would be able to have? Or would
yeah,
you
I think it'd be premature to say tonight. I'd rather take that, for me to express my opinion, I think I'd rather take that back to a committee and weigh all of the things that would affect, to be fair to the committee that kind of weighed everything in the first place. When you have all of the curriculum specialists there and the principals represented there, I think you get a good discussion going on that.
I would like to see the results of that, and also the total of time in comparison to,
Okay.
you know, what they had in the past to what they would have now
Yeah.
on the trimester
Very
schedule.
fair. Yeah, we could
That would
provide
be
that.
good to compare that.
Okay.
Anybody else have concerns or questions or comments on this?
So was the sole purpose then to provide more electives?
That was the intent of the state school board, was to provide more electives and more flexibility in the policy. They knew that DLI is coming into the middle school environment, which we haven't dealt with before, and that's probably going to be a 3-trimester experience for those students. I want you to notice the asterisk by the required courses on the policy, and follow that asterisk down to the bottom, which I believe is on, well, maybe we didn't get that in the
I'm not seeing
policy.
any asterisks.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
either.
it's right down at
It's
the
under
bottom.
electives.
Yeah.
This policy allows for some flexibility in required courses based on consultation with an administrator, counselor, and with a plan for college and career readiness. The idea is we may need to, you know, if you get a DLI student who's intent on continuing that through this, we'd like to offer the option for those students to take maybe some electives as well as their DLI world language courses. But that would be done in consultation with the school and on an as-needed basis, so that we had that flexibility built in. And so they may switch out some courses. Probably, you know, we wouldn't switch out a language arts course or a mathematics course, but you may be able to relax things a little to help them get into a band.
What does DLI stand for?
It's dual language immersion.
Oh.
That would be their.
And you will see that when you do your school visits here in a few weeks with the legislature. Some of you will. We've sent some of you to DLI schools. And so our first DLI contingent will come into the middle schools next year, and that's the Portuguese students that will come in, and they'll continue their language training all the way through the middle school. And by the time they get to the high school, the goal is they'll have a minor by the time they finish high school in the language, intended language.
So
Go ahead.
the State Board of Education members that I have spoken with in speaking about this particular issue and the vote that they individually took was that it was not a vote to create more electives, but a vote to give more choice to parents and students. And the vote was super close because on the State Board website it says that it was 8-7, and they will continue discussion on this.
So they haven't really made a strong,
They voted on it, but they are continuing discussion to see what the rule will look like and how it will evolve.
Okay, Thade, I'd like to put you on, in the center and the spotlight here, because you've been through this for a year. Could you come up and tell us how that all worked, or stand there and tell us how that worked at Spring Creek? Because last year you were on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So Spring Creek, we did the 2 U.S. history model with the writing extension class. And it was my first year teaching 8th grade, so I didn't have an 8th grade coming back from, but the teacher that I co-teach with, Kyle Stolworthy, who came from North Cache, had taught 8th grade for a year and then came down. And we had to cut quite a considerable amount of content, standards from it. I mean, Utah history is another, that one you're cutting quite a lot on, but for the 8th grade, it was quite a significant amount we had to cut, especially as we tried to get into the writing, and even the amount of writing that I did in my 6th grade classes, I did less in my 8th grade classes, which I think is kind of a shame. They did get the writing extension, and the guy teaching the writing extension at Spring Creek is a really great teacher, and I know the kids got a lot out of that. But, and I sent this in the letter, I think that where we can tie the writing to our content more than just generally whatever they're writing about, I think we can get a lot more skills associated with that, the reading with the content and the writing with that. And then, like I said, I mean, there's a lot of content we had to cut. There's a lot of sections of history we had to just kind of skip. We didn't even do any Western expansion because we kind of did it with Utah history. And so I think that, and the hard thing too, as far as I understand the high school, and I could be wrong, they don't do early U.S. history in high school anymore unless they do concurrent or AP, because I think in 11th grade they pick up where we left off from talking to the high school teachers. And I could be wrong, so you could, but I was going to say, at least talking to the Ridgeline High School teachers, as we've tried to coordinate between our two schools, they pick up where we left off in 11th grade and then move on. So unless these kids take a concurrent enrollment or an AP class, 8th grade is their early U.S. history experience, which is, I think, pretty important for their future civics, you know, governmental involvement and things like that. And if we're cutting some of that, that's a little bit tricky. And then just one last thing to add on, besides the writing and the content we're trying to do in 8th grade, we also have this civics test, which they pass for their high school graduation, that we have to spend a little bit of time on that as well. So basically, there's a lot of stuff we're trying to do with all that. So I don't know if you have any.
What was taught in your writing extension class?
I don't know everything he did. I know the first trimester he followed something similar to the National Social Studies writing thing, where they write a big essay researching and things like that. I know he shifted after that, and I don't know exactly what he did. I know he focused a lot on researching. I know he focused a lot on writing, but I don't know the exact specifics of what he did in it.
So what is the district's goal for a writing extension and a reading extension? What are they supposed to provide that the language arts and the other classes would not provide?
Blake could probably speak a little more eloquently, but the idea is to get the students writing more. I think most people would agree across our curriculum specialists that if we can give students more writing experiences and writing expertise, the main purpose of the middle school is to prepare them for the high school experience and to get them college and career ready. And I know our language arts specialist, who's not here this evening, would probably pipe up and say as much writing as we can get these kids doing and better prepared to be good communicators in writing would be beneficial.
So aren't our language arts teachers basing their curriculum on writing?
Parts of it, yeah, it's literature in writing.
For
the 3 trimesters that they get them in the middle school.
Okay.
Yeah, and Blake would argue and did very passionately in the middle school. In fact, we cut back one writing course that Spring Creek actually does a 3rd writing extension in addition to this, and we trimmed that back, but they would like them to do as much writing and reading extension as possible, but we did cut one of those trimesters back, so they would have an adjustment to make next year.
Well, could that writing be about U.S. history? I mean, could that be?
Absolutely, that's an option.
I guess that's the way I would head more. I would keep the history content, and maybe there's more emphasis on writing during part of it, or, you know, I'm not the expert definitely, but that's my opinion on it.
Larry, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm very concerned that our students are forgetting who they are and where they came from. And so I feel a strong need for the history content.
Okay. Randall?
I've got a question here. Maybe, is it feasible to maybe still have 4 electives, but ever add an extra period? Is going to 7 periods, giving them even more options? Is that a viable alternative where they could, or does that make the class time too short? Have they ever thought about?
Yeah, that'll affect your instructional minutes across the board.
Is that a possibility, though, to go to 7 periods and just still give them 4 electives, but you could fill in?
I think you might fill the room a lot more than you have it tonight if you propose 7-period try. I don't know.
I thought we were trying to give them more options, and that would give them a lot more.
But it's definitely an option that could be on the table. But
Roger?
I like the idea of giving them more elective courses, but where we take it from, I'm not real sure about taking it from the history. But I do like the idea of giving them some choices.
Alan?
That's why I wanted to hear what Thane had to say, because he's been through it. He's gone through there, and I'm really concerned about cutting back those classes to one try for Utah history and 2 for United States histories. I'd like to see if we couldn't put. This is my feeling that to put more writing into those classes, and give them the extra try to do that.
Jeff, do you have any more to add?
No, that's my feeling also.
Okay, Terry?
As a parent who all 5 of my students took band every year of middle school, if they ever complained about having no electives, I reminded them, you just used 3 electives. There are electives in middle school, and if you choose to do band, that's your elective, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can I just make a comment too?
Yeah.
First off, I think you all ought to reflect back on a few months ago when I was asked specifically what I would do if the state board did what they did, and we had that discussion right here, indicating that we would welcome the opportunity of having that discussion right here at this board. So this is the beginning, okay? So there's nothing that isn't healthy about having a good, solid discussion. The problem you get into is wanting to make decisions without having enough knowledge and the whole picture. So that's why I wanted to at least have some discussion before we even had any input from the audience. A couple of things I think we need to remember. One is this district went to trimesters years ago, and I wasn't here, but the intent from the people I've talked to was to give more opportunity for electives. And you have more periods of classes. So you already have a pretty tight schedule, and you can see that. And so whether the state did anything or not, there are districts ahead of us that have already gone through one major change that we haven't gone through yet, and that is dual language immersion, okay? But before we even get into that discussion, we need to recognize that we've had this discussion numerous times over the years, and some of you have been here long enough, but the discussion has been, even at our high schools, what's a full-year course under a trimester? And a full-year course under a trimester is 2 tries. Now, we've extended some of those over the years because we felt, and I think rightly so, that we needed to place more emphasis on kids being able to speak and write and do math. And so those courses have been given basically an extra trimester even at our high school setting. That's what you see here. So I think you need to remember that a full-year course under a trimester system was designed to have 2 trimesters and then free something up so that a kid could take something else that was worthwhile, and that was the premise, okay? There are very few schools left on trimesters. We're one of the few. Okay, then if you start looking down the road at, and I'm only throwing this out, got to remember I'm a history major out there, so don't be throwing any barbs this way saying the kid doesn't know his history, okay? The fact with dual language immersion, and then I'd like you to walk through this. I don't want to be the one that walks you through this, but if you start, we have 4 groups of kids approaching our secondary schools, and they are all going to be put into a much advanced language class than we've ever offered in this district. And so we know we've been on that course for a long time, and we will meet that expectation with parents. But you throw that into the mix for those kids with any art, any music, band, choir, and you can see how this schedule just automatically really tightens up for a certain number of kids coming through our system. And you can tell them, yeah, you've taken your elective,
Right.
And that's fine. We'll have parents who will be really pleased that their kid is getting that type of language instruction. But when they don't have an opportunity to take anything else, because we've said these are going to be full year courses, you just need to know what you're doing and be able to understand that somebody might challenge you on the fact that, okay, why do you even have trimesters? If 2 trimesters isn't a full year, then we might as well be back on semester systems. I'm just trying to give you enough history and background so that you understand when this goes back to a committee, all that is what they kind of were working on. Now, I wasn't at the committee meeting, so I can't vouch that I was there, but I'm just trying to give you the perspective of why they might have looked at U.S. history being 1-2 trimester block, and that becomes now, if the time is sufficient to be able to cover what, and I don't know that, but that's the idea behind going to the extended period. And I just had my first experience with the 52-minute class at a school that I just visited. And it was different than the 45 minutes, and you can cover more. I don't know how it relates in the exact amount of time. So I'm just trying to tell you, this is an initial discussion. I think we ought to have that. We ought to hear what some of our own staff members, I don't know if there's just any parents out there, but let's take that input in. And it's okay to express initial feelings, but I think we just get all that and send it back to the committee and say, let's put some more time in and come back again, and it might even be good to have a couple of board members go to those committee meetings, so you hear it firsthand what's going on in that. So that's all I wanted to add.
Okay. Sure. I just want to add something too. I looked at our vision statement, and in our vision statement it says our vision is to provide a well-rounded educational learning experience that provides students the opportunity to gain the skills necessary to help them achieve their personal, educational, and professional goals. And I think we kind of need to keep that in mind as we're talking about this. And just something, this is just a personal feeling of mine. I had it as a parent, I had it as a teacher, now I have it as a board member. But I think classes like the history and arts and the elective classes really expand the mind and expose the kids to a lot of diversity and help them kind of find their place where they excel and have talents and skills. And I'd kind of like us to keep that in mind as we think about this, because that's just an opinion of mine. One last question for you, Tim. Is this schedule put up here to help with the SAGE test, or is it to help educate kids? That was what was your goal when you were doing this?
Well, I think Mike summarized it best. I think we have a variety of goals. Obviously, we would like students, not necessarily for the SAGE test, but SAGE test is just a reflection or a slice of what is taught in the language arts or mathematics, but we want them to be prepared for college and high school and college and beyond, and in being effective readers, effective writers. We want them to have a well-rounded education, like you mentioned as part of the vision statement. We want them to have some opportunities, and it's difficult, as you can see here, to balance all of those goals. And this was our first draft, I guess, that we brought to you for a first reading of what we came up with and felt good about as a group when we met. And obviously, there's some that don't like where we landed, so, and that's perfectly okay.
Would it be possible to have a couple of options on these, or is that too hard to figure that out?
No, it's fairly easy. You mean bring the board a couple of options?
Uh-huh.
That would be
Changing some
possible.
things around
Yes,
that
absolutely.
your committee feels good about.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Tim, would you thank the committee for putting the work into it
Right.
and helping us to understand the direction and the reasons for this? Thank you.
We'll go ahead then and have our public input. And we do have a few guidelines for that. Let me just move back here to public input really fast. Okay, I have the form, and we will go in this order. Ross Peterson, then Pamela Budge, then Lori Robinson, David Mortensen, and Patrick Clark. You each will have 3 minutes, and any personnel comments are prohibited, and we just ask that you be respectful, which I know you all will. Okay.
What about personal comments?
You can do it in 3 minutes.
Anyway, it's a privilege for me to be here. I'm actually here representing the USU History Department, so I'm a prejudiced witness. But I also want to express appreciation from myself and from them for the work that's done by the board, the teachers, the administrators, and our fundamental feeling in all the years, this is my 50th year of teaching at a university, that public education is really the backbone of our nation. And so consequently, what you do and how you do it is really impacting the future. And because of my particular training and my career, and the time I spent also at a private school as a president of a school, that history is something that shouldn't be shortchanged. All you've got to do is watch the news and look at our public officials and realize what they don't know about how our system works and why it works the way it does. And I think, as was brought out, it's very important for our young people to know who we are, why we are here, and how we got where we are, and why we did the things we did, and why our system has worked the way it has, why you have a civil war, why you have to do so many different things that sometimes may look distasteful in order to look progress so they can live in the world they're living in now. And when they don't understand that, they live in that instantaneous world where they can get an answer on Google. And so anything you can do, I took this real gamble the last couple of years on request and have been teaching a course in the College of Business where I would be the worst example of how to manage any dollar, let alone, more than that. But anyway, the number one thing of all the alumni that we've had come back that they tell the students in business is you've got to learn how to write. And you've got to learn to have a historical reference to document the specific points you're making in your writing. And you cannot do that off the top of your head unless you've had a lot of experience. And so it's not that we would have a plea, we would just encourage you to, and these are tough jobs because you have other influences from the state, the nation, that try to help you develop these curriculums, and we have different parts of the country, and I'm glad I'm not making the decisions, but we would ask you to really consider maintaining the amount of state and local history as well as national history in the curriculum for the students. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Pamela Budge. I live in Paradise, and I'm a parent. The only specific suggestion that I had was for the committee, if you could possibly, and I know the reasons for it, but if you could possibly not consider the SAGE test results, I'd like your suggestion of focusing more on the mission. But beyond that, I just wanted to express my support for what the state school board decided. I appreciate that they're bringing decision-making authority back to local boards. I feel like I, as a parent, have more influence at the local level than at the state level. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this, but I wanted to share some public statements that our state school board members have made on why they voted for this. Board member Linda Hansen, she said it's not about the classes, but it was about who makes the decision. She said that she trusts and she supports local boards, and I thought that was really encouraging. Board member Michelle Bolter said that I feel that this is a good step to restoring local control and putting the power back in the hands of parents and teachers. The power is back in the hands of those closest to the children. This is local control, and I stand by it. Board member Elisa Ellis said that by putting the decision-making power back in the hands of the local school boards, we are allowing the public and parents a more effective means of communicating how they would like their children to be educated. Board member Joel Wright said, by making this change, the state board is asking districts and schools to consider working with students and parents to find out what they want to learn and then offering those opportunities. Our teachers and schools have the ability to engage and inspire students to become lifetime learners, and this change gives them the opportunity to do that better. I look forward to seeing what happens, and I do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you because yesterday, the day before, I took a big stick and stirred things all up a lot. And it was out of a concern for my students at my school and for the future citizens of our country and those people who will be doing my job and your job in the future. And one of the things, I had a lot of, well, you've all received a letter from me who are on the board. I understand there are a lot of logistical concerns when creating a schedule like this. And just from looking at that, it makes me wonder what's going to happen next year when we have the DLI students come in and what will happen in the 8th grade, because something might have to go. So I am not unrealistic in my expectations, and I realize that the committee had a difficult job to do. I'm concerned that there wasn't maybe any teacher input at all into these decisions or any parent input. But one of the things that concerns me the most as a former English teacher is that there's something called an affective filter that really affects our middle school students. And I gotta look at my notes, but that is a motivational factor that comes into play when they're comprehending information. And it creates anxiety, self-consciousness. It can be caused by boredom, and it's basically like a preconceived notion when they go into a class that they perceive as difficult. And I'm concerned that having a writing class will do that to them when I can, in my history class, set that affective filter aside by getting them excited about some type of content that we're learning and having them write within the context of U.S. history. For example, they've been working on paper Facebook pages the last several days in my class, and they have to take the persona of an explorer on and make a Facebook page for that explorer. And they're writing, and they're having fun, and they're researching, and they don't even know it. So I can reach those students who are maybe a little more at risk, or students who maybe might get put into a writing class, and their fear of being able to succeed in that class might interfere with their ability to succeed. But I can camouflage the writing in my class. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for all your time that you volunteer.
Thank you.
Let me just introduce myself. My name is David Mortensen. I've been teaching at North Cache for 15 years, and I'm here to represent the history department tonight. Some of my colleagues are here. Some were unable to attend, but I was able to talk with all of them today, and we all feel unanimous about some of the things I'm going to share. First of all, I just want to make it clear to the board, so they understand this. For 8th grade history, 8th graders previously have been on the trimester system, and with the school realignment, they're still on the trimester system. Our classes were 50 minutes before for 8th grade, and they're still 50 minutes. So we haven't gained or lost any instruction time for 8th grade students. It's exactly the same as it was before, even with the realignment. And the proposal would cut our history from 3 trimesters, a full year, to 2 trimesters, which means we would lose 60 days of instruction in U.S. history. Now, I'm not a math teacher, but 50 minutes a day for 60 days, we're going to lose 50 hours of history instruction, 50 hours. 8th grade is the only time these students will receive the first half of U.S. history. In high school, they get the second half, which is primarily focused on the 20th and 21st century. What would they miss out on, or what would we have to cut short? 50 hours we would lose. They would lose the time to learn about the Founding Fathers. They would lose time to learn about the Constitution. They would lose time to learn about the Civil War, the American Revolution. We would have to cut 50 hours of instruction time, where for many students, this is the only time they will learn about that in K through 12. And we know that many of our students will not attend college. Of course, we want them all to, but not all the students will. So this will be their opportunity to learn about these important things in U.S. history. Another thing that I'd like to talk to the board about, our high schools have fantastic programs. Our school, North Cache, particularly feeds into Skyview High School. I'm sure many of you have heard about the We the People program there. They win national awards. We have a great debate program there, AP classes. Many of my former students have joined these programs when they've entered the high school, and they've come back and told me that the things that they learned in their 8th grade history class prepared them for these rigorous programs in the high school. And if we pull that stepping stone, if we take 50 hours away of history instruction from these students, that's going to affect not just the 8th grade, but it will affect the high school as well, where they've developed these great programs. I know part of the concern is about the writing, and the district has, submitted the proposal to add a writing extension, but I guarantee that we write in history. We write about the Constitution. We use critical thinking and analysis. We compare primary documents. So we do write in history, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Patrick Clark. I am the orchestra teacher at Green Canyon High School, and I teach orchestra and choir both at North Cache Middle School. I have taught both in urban settings in Ogden, inner city from the 25th Street all the way up to 12th Street if you're familiar, high transient population, as well as in Mill Creek is a facility for incarcerated youth, long-term care. And I'd like to discuss about the well, first offer my support for the movement to consider to make sure we don't drop any U.S. history courses and the great opportunities that involves. But also consider the recent state board and their decision with eliminating fine arts as a requirement class in the middle school. Now, I personally, as obviously a music teacher, as well as many, many people in any kinds of walks of life, fully understand what the arts bring, whether it be an art class, which I've taught for 2 years at White Pine, 2 years, the previous 2 years, from orchestra, teaching band, choir, percussion, all of which I have done. And seeing what this can do, not only to extend the abilities into other curriculum, but also its ability to just create good students. Now, I am concerned that dropping these fine arts classes is a poor move, that high school is geared towards moving a student, giving them way more electives at that opportunity to push them towards a career, whether they choose to go to college for that or to a trade school or some kind of apprenticeship, which I have been a part of. I'm a 9-year professional painter in renovation in residential neighborhoods, as well as a 2-year career as a butcher. And I can't tell you how much that actually studying the fine arts has helped me in those careers that I've chosen, whether it be in those trades, as well as in my college courses, into what the career I have now. That these fine arts classes that the state has chosen to eliminate as a requirement is not right. And I urge you to consider that you keep at least one credit in the fine arts, whether it be in art, music, whether it be band, orchestra, choir, into this curriculum choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone who came, and we appreciate your comments and your input, and we'll go ahead and move forward. Our committee now has some new information to consider as you move forward, and I guess that's all we need to take care of for tonight.
Yep. On that.
On that. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on then to our action agenda, which is to approve the Greenville North Park boundary change.
Thank you. If you'll remember, a couple of weeks ago, actually it's been a month ago, I believe, that I actually presented the boundary change between North Park and Greenville. That minor change did not make a difference to any of our students in the boundaries that they were in. All it did was allow for a bus stop to be made for both of those schools. So I'm just here tonight to see if you would take action on that and what the direction would be.
Okay. I will take a motion to approve the Greenville North Park boundary change.
I'll make that motion that we approve the Greenville and Greenville and North Park boundary changes.
I second.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
All votes are in, and it's unanimous in the affirmative.
See how much easier elementary is than secondary. That's why I'm elementary.
I'm sorry, I forgot to have discussion. Anybody want to say anything? Or too late? Okay, we'll go ahead then and move on to our reports agenda, and Joel.
That does not look like Joel.
Oh, yeah.
Joel has changed. Joel had to leave for a special needs parent meeting at Skyview. So he just wanted me to take down any questions that you had and let you know that you guys should all have this report already, right?
Yes.
So,
well, did we get it?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
He said that he had given you a new one, so.
Okay.
So if any of you have any questions, I can take them back to him, or you can contact him directly.
Okay. I appreciate that he did the little process, the flow chart. That was so helpful.
Yeah.
So that was great. Okay, thank you. All right, proposed clubs for Green Canyon High School. Randy Binion.
Thanks for letting me come. These clubs, I think you have a list of the clubs before you. These are clubs that have been, most, if not all of them, although there may be a new one in, the Iceberg Lettuce Club.
It's on there.
I'm not sure that was a club at Skyview or not. That might be a new one. But most of these clubs are extensions of clubs that were in existence at Skyview. And as we begin our journey and the adventure begins at Green Canyon High School, we start by creating clubs for student involvement. So it's my hope that you'll be able to accept these clubs and approve these clubs, and we're getting going. Today during lunch, I had a student asked me for a list of them because she's actually this is a foreign exchange student. She's like, I want to get involved. I want to get involved. So the clubs are a great addition to Green Canyon High School. Is there any questions regarding any of our clubs?
Yeah, where are they going to do the hammocking club? Is that going to be in a classroom, U.S. history classroom here?
They'll be riding in the hammocks.
Yeah.
No. Hammock Club meets at various locations around anywhere there's trees. SDL, there's a lot of trees over there. I often see people go over and hammock there. They hammock down at First Dam. Anywhere you can find 2 trees or 2 poles, they'll hang a hammock and relax.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
The Green Life Club doesn't have a faculty advisor on the list that we have. Is there one now?
I'd have to look through my notes on that one, but they will. Any club that does not have an advisor is not approved until they have an advisor, and clubs are not allowed to assemble until they have an advisor. So, okay. We will have an advisor before we meet as a club.
My only other question was, don't the last 3 clubs on the list do almost the same thing?
I might have a different list than you have. What 3 clubs are you referring to?
I am referring to
ARCs.
the Acts of Kindness, the Governor's Youth Council, and Stand for Courage.
Similar, yet a little bit different. Acts of Kindness is kind of based on a focus on random acts of kindness organization. So they're looking for service in a myriad of ways. Governor's Youth Council often takes on more of a service to the school in creating causes, in supporting causes. They've often been included in supporting health department type functions, anti-smoking, anti-tobacco type things. So they are a little bit different, similar. But
and the Stand for Courage?
Stand for Courage, I'd have to, that's a new one for me.
That's an anti-bullying club, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
What is the FFCLA club? What does that stand for?
And that's a state. They have state guidelines. It's similar to FFA for farming and agriculture, only for family and consumer science.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you. Okay, Millville Elementary boundary change.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. If you'll look at the document right here, this is Millville Elementary's boundaries. You can see the bigger piece is close to the school itself, and then there's a sliver down south that we take in. Millville Elementary has a boundary that is a buffer between Lincoln Elementary and Canyon Elementary, if you will. There's about 3 blocks that run right through Hiram there. I want to focus on that bottom sliver. So that's a blown up portion of that bottom sliver. If you look on there, and I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but that purple haze piece is the current Millville Elementary boundary. In the corner there is an area right here. That's actually a subdivision that is going in currently. They've just widened the road as of about 2 weeks ago. The infrastructure is already in for that subdivision, and the pavement, the asphalt, has been poured for the subdivision itself. As you can see by the shades there of the green versus the purple, about 2/3 of that subdivision that's going in would lie in the Millville boundary, and the other third of that little subdivision would lie in the boundaries of Canyon Elementary. Seems a little silly to split a little subdivision like that into 2 different schools, So my proposal is that we extend the Millville Elementary boundary that would be the section, let's get that a little straighter at least. So the proposal is that we would just extend that red rectangle that you see, we would just extend the Millville boundary down, and then that way that entire subdivision would be in the Millville boundary. Also, any future growth down there would also go to Millville. A couple reasons for this. One, it makes sense with our current boundary, but two, Canyon Elementary is full. They are kind of bursting at the seams. They do not have room right now. Millville Elementary currently has 3 empty classrooms, so they could withstand and handle the growth at this point. So that is my proposal, if you have any questions.
How many houses are expected to be in that new subdivision?
I did not count exactly, but it looked like 18 or 20. It looked about like 9 or 10 homes on each side of that little street.
Okay.
Any others? Okay, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the School Land Trust budget realignments for first Lewiston with Leslie Burt, principal, then White Pine Elementary with Shelley Healy, principal, and then Wellsville Elementary with Glenn Harris, principal.
I won't take too much of your time. Leslie Burt. We were a little disheartened. We discovered that Lewiston Elementary and North Park Elementary were the only 2 elementaries that did not receive continued funding for the Lexia online programs. The Lexia money comes from a technology grant, or I don't know what exactly it's called, and it comes with some pretty strict, rigid requirements, and we worked our little hearts out but didn't quite make it. So the Lexia company threw us a little bit of a bone and said, normally the fee to have our program would be close to 40 grand, but we would be willing to offer you to continue it this coming year for $6,000. Awesome opportunity. Now I've got to figure out how to come up with $6,000. And was able to look at the trust lands money, and we were already looking at trying to support that Lexia and some other reading programs by increasing our technology. And we were purchasing 3 Chromebook labs, and we were planning to fill those labs with 40 Chromebooks, but we really don't have 40 students in a classroom, thank heavens. And so by just tweaking that down to 35 Chromebooks, we were able to get out a little bit more money from there, which also meant that our software requirement reduced a little bit from there. And we had also thrown in $1,000 for some library books to kind of boost up our library for our new 6th grade students, but we've also been able to find some other funding for that. So we were able to squeak out the $6,000, and so the amended plan, we are like the skin of our teeth. We are not going to have a ton of carryover. Our actual funding is $54,780, and the new plan, including the $6,000 for Lexia, has us spending $54,183. So we'll have like $600 to spare. But I think this is a great opportunity, and then we will reapply for the state money in the coming year.
Okay, questions, anyone? Great.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, Leslie.
Hi. I'm Shelley Healy. It's good timing. Principal at White Pine. And last year, when we were planning our trust lands budget, we knew that we would possibly need another teacher. So we planned for all of that money, except for a couple thousand, to go for paraprofessionals. Then this year came around, we asked the district, yes, our 5th grade is in fact at 35 and 35 in a class. Could we please get a teacher? The district graciously said, yes, we will pay for half of it. So that's what I'm asking of you, is to officially change our trust land budget to provide the other half of that teacher. And I have done the math on it, and we can do that and still even have some money for our paras to help in math. So do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do I need to give you this information?
That would probably be helpful.
Can I give it to you?
Mhm. Thanks.
I think you have our proposal in front of you for Wellsville Elementary, but essentially, we've accrued a rather large carryover in what we call our combined aid budget, and we'd like to spend that down, and so our school community council proposes that we decrease the number of aids that we pay out of trust lands and use our carryover, and with that money that we freed up to increase our expenditure in our goal 2, which happens to be to buy some more technology to help with our writing goal, which would essentially be mostly Chromebooks and a Chromebook lab.
Okay. Any questions, anyone?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, the proposed purchasing policy revision, Scott?
Thank you. Good evening. Several months ago, we received word from the State Office of Education that the child nutrition program was receiving some new purchasing guidelines and procedures that were going to be implemented from a federal standpoint. And in order to help us go through that policy, to be able to help us, they did a review of our purchasing policies for child nutrition and actually for the entire district, which was helpful. After that review, they gave us a template of purchasing policy revisions that I've actually given to you for child nutrition, which I will get to later. But during that revision, we discovered that we had a small discrepancy between the state procurement guidelines in an administrative rule that we needed to take care of. And so that is why I'm here before you this night. I've given you, I've sent you a couple of copies, and first of all, in our procurement policy, I would like to go through kind of the changes that I am proposing this evening. And I apologize for the format of this. This is actually not section 1, it's section 7, but the formatting wouldn't work, and so I just, I went with it. But first of all, on page 1-5, which is actually 7-5 of the policy, we had a conflict in our procurement policy about the individual procurement threshold. We had our threshold at $500, which conflicted further down in our policy where it was $1,000. So I am proposing to change in section B there, the individual item procurement threshold for the district to be raised to $1,000. This is the maximum amount that the district can expend to obtain a single item service from one vendor at one time without requiring competitive purchasing. So that will change that amount from $500 to $1,000. Then if you will turn the page over to number 4, item C, where we need to make the change in the policy is regarding the amount of a small purchase in our threshold. Currently, we had our threshold, which we thought was $5,000, where we needed to make a bid. And that is still true when we have several items that we are buying, but the individual procurement threshold, any item that is over $1,000, say a copy machine or something that is $1,500 or a printer, we need to get more quotes. So I will go ahead and read the proposed change in that policy. This first of all, when each item in the procurement costs $1,000 or less and the total procurement is a maximum amount of $5,000, the small purchase quotes not required rule allows the agency to select the best source without seeking competitive quotes. That's if, say you have a cart, and the best way for me to use this is if you're shopping and you have a cart full of several small items that are not over $1,000, but the total aggregate does not reach $5,000, you can go up to $5,000. So that's where the confusion lied with our current policy that we have established. So the agency may not spend a maximum of $50,000 in a fiscal year with an individual vendor. So in D, when the individual procurement item cost is more than $1,000 but less than $5,000 and the total procurement is less than $5,000, the agency must obtain a minimum of 2 competitive quotes. The agency must purchase the item service from the supplier offering the lowest quote. And I've got before you a handy purchasing guidelines for small purchases, kind of a threshold that you've probably seen before, but this corrects the changes that I'm proposing this evening. And if you'll notice on level 2, where the individual item that we've created a table there, we've taken that straight from the administrative rule from the state. We've contacted them, and they have told us that this is exactly the state rule for these small thresholds. So how we can find that is, if every item is less than $1,000 and the total purchase is less than $5,000, no quote is required. But if any single item is more than $1,000 and total purchase is less than $5,000, 2 competitive written quotes are required. That satisfies the law, and that satisfies where we need to be as a district to follow and make sure that we are covered under state law and the state procurement. So that is, in essence, the most, other than to fill and to completely be in line with the state, I am proposing also that we go to the 2 competitive quotes. Previously, the district had a policy of 3, but if it was difficult, you only needed to get 2. I am proposing that we follow the state law and go with the 2 written competitive quotes. That way it makes it easy for us to understand. It makes it easy for all the employees to understand if any item is over $1,000, you need 2 competitive quotes. And it isn't there isn't a question about where that status lies. And then at the very end, on item number 6, -C on page 1-8, we are proposing that purchases greater than $100,000 must be approved by the Board of Education prior to purchase. As I have researched and looked at other school districts, their purchasing policy, to me this makes a lot of sense for us to come and propose those purchases to the board before they go forward. Any questions, any concerns about this policy change? We feel that
We got a Ferrari before it went in, so.
Good planning.
But I feel very good and I feel very comfortable with this policy. I think that it covers all of our bases. And once we found out about that we weren't in compliance, then that is why I'm here before you tonight. We want to make sure we're a district that complies with state and federal law completely, and I want to make sure that we get that before you, the board, and get that approved.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're up next for
Okay.
the procedures for child
So,
nutrition program.
secondly,
Sorry, whoa.
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
I have a couple of Utah code references
Yes.
that I have issue with.
Okay.
Under the public funds definition, there's it says 25 in parentheses, should be 26.
Oh, and could you tell me which reference you're?
Public funds definition, I don't know, this document's hard for me to reference because there aren't like A's, B's, 1s, 2s.
Okay.
So it's under the public funds definition.
And it's cut off on our screens.
Yeah, it's cut off. The document on our board docs
Okay.
is cut off on the left side.
I'll make sure that we get that corrected.
The other thing is that when in all of the procurement thresholds sections, when Utah Code 63G 6A408 is quoted, I can't find that anywhere. It doesn't exist. So I'm wondering if it should be 63G 6A506.
Yeah, I'm sure that is. When we took this policy, we adopted it from, was it Granite School District, I believe, Dale, and why recreate the wheel if another school district has done that? And so we will go through and make sure that is referenced on that policy correctly.
That would be great, because 506 was effective in May of 2017, so I would guess it's the most recent.
Correct, and that would make sense where we need to update that with the newest ruling on there. So we will take care of that. Thank you for bringing that and pointing that out.
All right, is that everything then? Okay, all right.
Okay, lastly, I have the Procurement Procedures Child Nutrition Program This template was given to us by the State Office of Education of Child Nutrition, and they've given this to every school district, went through the review just like we did, and they've proposed all of the school districts to adopt this policy. I have met with Susan Walentine and Kurt Jenkins, who is now over the child nutrition policy, and we have updated this document to completely align ourselves with the federal rulings, the new guidelines, which the state has adopted, which I'm bringing to you at this point to adopt into our local policy.
Is this the one that says procurement procedures, child nutrition?
Yes, it is. Correct.
So what are the underlined underlined?
Oh, so that is basically the pages 1 through 9 will be implemented. We're bringing that to you so that we can fill in, once it gets adopted and approved by the board, we can fill in the date so that we have that and can implement that. And we'll put the revision date on there. This basically follows the same thing, procurement measures, procedures. It talks about sealed bids, all of that we currently do. We just want to make sure we get this in policy format. There are some other changes. There's a Buy American provision. There's also a women-owned minority provision that the federal government wants to put in as well. We've got all that information, and they've given us templates for any purchasing documents that we have, any formats, the RFPs, the RFQs that we can put together from the state to make sure that they cover these documents and revisions.
Okay, questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The district data governance plan. That would be Tim, Robin.
Hey, just let me clarify, I was whistling at Shelley Healy. She did an amazing job out there this year with the remodel to White Pine Elementary, and I had a privilege to see her at work and really led that team well through that process. We were right up to the wire getting that school opened, and so she did a great job leading her staff through that. So I was complimenting her. Oh, she left. I can't even tell her I whistled for her. All right, if you ever seen the movie While You Were Sleeping, I was writing data governance plans and student data privacy stuff. Yes. Just to give you a little history, House Bill 358 was passed a year and a half, 2 years ago, 2 legislative sessions ago, with the idea that that would be fully implemented by October 1st of this year. Went into law at the end of June. As part of that law, it's called the Student Data Privacy Law. The state hired a student data privacy person who opened an office. I think they have 3 or 4 individuals working there currently, and they are taking this idea of student data privacy very seriously at the state, that we protect student data as a school district. And I think I've brought this up before, that there would be some things coming before the board with regards to that, and that's what's represented here this evening. I did not, so let me give you 4 requirements for October 1st. It's 4 or 5. I'll go through them and then we'll figure out if it's 4 or 5. One is that the district adopt a student data governance plan. So that's one thing that we'll be reviewing tonight. That they adopt an IT security plan. That's another element that we'll be reviewing tonight. That they develop a meta dictionary, which is a fancy term for making sure that we have recorded with the state all of the data elements that we collect from students when they come into our district or as they go through our district. And so Robin, by the way, I should introduce you to a couple of people. Robin Hedgecock is here. She's in charge of the meta dictionary and has been working very hard on that. She's also our newly minted student data manager, which is required of each school district under this law. And then if you look toward the back there, Kevin Womack is our our security officer for the school district. That change was made last year, and he handles making sure that our IT infrastructure is designed so that we protect student data and protect our network resources. So that's his role in the school district and in this plan. And then the fourth item, I'm going to forget it, so I'll come back to it. Anyway, what you see before you is the full student data governance plan. I'm a little nervous because I didn't think that Terry would read every word of everything tonight, but I'm sure, I'm positive after that last presentation that she has. And she confirmed that for me, so I'm sure there's some things she's going to bring to my attention.
You didn't
But
list any Utah code in here.
I knew that when I was sitting back here that I should reference House Bill 358, so that will happen. So anyway, there's a data governance team consisting of the Chief Information Officer, which is one of the hats I wear, the Student Data Manager, which I indicated is Robin, the Information Systems Manager, which is Judy Gibbons, and the Security Officer, which is Kevin in the back. I'm not going to go through every aspect of this plan. Hopefully we'll have had an opportunity to read through that. It defines what we will do with third-party vendors, how we will handle research data requests in the school district. There are 2 companion documents to this data governance plan. You have those as well. One of them is the research application or application for research review. So there's a process for that now. There has been a process in the past, but we've refined it. So if we have a lot of people who come to our district requesting student data, and so there's a process for that now that has to be approved, and we have to be careful that we do not release what's called personally identifiable information, which is the student's first and last name, their address, their birth date, their student ID number, those types of things to the researcher. So you can see that as well. There is a vendor agreement that we are required to have our vendors sign. So just to give you an idea of where some of our data sits, we use the PowerSchool as our student information system. We actually host that data here, so that data sits within our data center, but we're recently undergoing some problems with PowerSchool, and we have to ship our entire data set off to PowerSchool to allow them to troubleshoot PowerSchool. We have CareDocs, which we keep some student medical information in. That information is housed off-site. We have, several systems like that we utilize. We have a document management system that we scan documents into. We've been trying to refine, I've just met with the auditors who've been here about we've always scanned birth certificates in our school district. We're going to we'll continue that practice in the short term as far as we'll scan the document because we have to provide proof of that information that we've collected from the parent. But once that's entered into PowerSchool, we can just keep an affidavit and expunge that data, so we're not keeping students' birth records here at the district office. You'd be surprised how many people come to the school district wanting a copy of their birth certificate, and we are not an official government agency to provide that. We also we're required to do proof of residency documentation, and we sign an affidavit for that so that we're not keeping people's personal mortgage statements or utility statements in our data systems, and so we expunge that information. Well, actually a secretary reviews it and then just signs an affidavit saying that they've seen that information. All right, Terry, I'm going to open it up to questions.
So my first question is, Appendix A is the district employee non-disclosure agreement. So as board members, do we need to sign one of those each year as the employees do?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We are implementing a new professional development system in the coming weeks here at the school district. We are required 60 days after the adoption of the plan to make sure all of our employees within the school district are trained on protecting, that have access to student data, that are trained to protect that data. And so we'll be providing that. That will include the school board. We'll need to go over that. So it'll be, Robin is starting on that already and developing that. Should be short and sweet and to the point. But yes, every employee that has access to student data will go through that training.
My only other question was, did you write this? I mean, like, from cold, or did you have a template?
No, the state provided a template.
But usually the state templates are not.
It was not good.
Not good.
Yes, it wasn't good, so there was many hours invested in this,
'Cause
cleaning it
this
up
is
and trying to make
awesome
it
document.
simpler. So if I missed
can
anything,
understand that.
I'll look good in orange.
Well done.
Yeah, you can understand it when you read it. Well,
Yeah.
I agree. Good job. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Tim.
Okay, I've got, let
One
me give
more.
you one other item. The Information Technology Security Plan is the other one on the, next one on the agenda. That simply is a document that describes how we as a school district design our infrastructure to protect student data and network resources. So that's important, how we transmit data, which we're going to be taking a group of secretaries and district office staff, including Dell, through some training in about a week on a program called Send Safely, which allows us to encrypt student data or even employee data when we send it over email, which is going to be a good improvement to our district as far as transmitting that data safely. We transmit a lot of special education records. We transmit a lot of records request every time a student comes into our district or leaves our district. We get a records request from a school, a partnering school, or either a receiving or a sending school. We want to make sure that data is transmitted, encrypted, so that there's no chance of that being intercepted there. So there's going to be some training for a group of individuals within the school district that are responsible for sending that data safely. Talks about what we do in the case of a breach. Some security officers will tell you it's just not a matter of if a breach will happen, but when. So it talks about that a little bit. I'm sure with both of these plans, we're going to learn by experience and have to modify them as we go along, and we'll bring those changes back to the board as we learn how to walk ourselves through this. You ought to know that we went through a complete a complete security audit last year. We brought a team in and they spent an entire week with the school district, and they pretty much got into everything in the school district: employee social security numbers, account numbers. They assured us that there's not a school district in the state of Utah that they wouldn't have gotten all of their data. They left us with a very fine report on how to mitigate a lot of what they found. We've been working diligently. Kevin's been working diligently for several months, working on hardening different aspects of our network and making sure we've done a lot of things to secure our network and to improve things. And that happens in both the technology itself and in the processes that we follow as a school district. So that's the Information Security Technology Plan. Any further questions?
You've been busy.
Yep.
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah,
Well written.
Okay.
for sure. Okay, thank you, Tim. All right, we'll skip number 9, head down to number 10, the new cell phone policy.
I'm back.
Quick.
All right, we'll make this quick.
You
So,
have been really busy, you and Jenda, and probably a few others as
yeah.
well.
So, another committee. We met with a group of we had teachers, principals, Blair, help me out here, district office staff, a board member on a policy, so Larry can chime in here, to rewrite the student cellular device policy, formerly known as the student cell phone policy. I kind of chuckle because when I was first came into the district, there was a new cell phone policy written, and it was outdated about a week after it was written. It was really hard to police. I think it said that students had to keep their cell phones in their lockers at all times and turned off, and to police that was really a difficult thing. So what was written in policy and what had to happen in practice were two different things. So we tried to really hard to write this policy to have some kind of endurance that is something that we could live with. So it's a total rewrite of the policy. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. We think it's, I brought to the committee what I thought was a pretty well-written policy, and they made it even better. So we did a lot of cleanup on this and a lot of effort, and we've met with transportation in the meantime and made a couple of adjustments there as well. I think it's a very workable policy when it comes to our schools. I'd love to hear if you have a difference of opinion. We took seriously the idea that the students should be assured of their privacy when they're in locker rooms, bathrooms, changing facilities. So we added some pretty strong language in the policy about that right to privacy and the disciplinary actions that'll take place and how we'll help mitigate that in the schools. So it's not a long policy. So any questions on that?
I just have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Go. Well done, first of all. My question is, when it says a device may be taken away until the end of the day, what liability does the district have of, let's say it gets damaged after it's taken away between that time and the end of the day when it's time to get picked up? Do we need to mention anything about that, or do we have any liability? It says there's no liability for lost or stolen devices, but if something gets damaged in the interim between the time it's taken away and the time that the parents come to get it.
I usually try to damage it.
Okay.
Just kidding.
Okay.
No, that's well taken. We have confiscated a lot of cell phones till the end of the day or middle of the day when I was an assistant principal, and we never had an issue with that, but
they are
I guess it could be an
getting
issue.
fairly expensive.
They are, yeah, $1,000 iPhone. I'd
right.
have to be responsible.
And having just paid to fix one.
Yeah, we could. Don't know how to address that yet, but we could certainly look at that.
Well, the question came to my mind. What if someone disputed there was some damage, and what would our liability be on that? So.
Right.
This was just a personal question and shows my lack of technology. What's a wearable cellular device?
Right here.
Apple Watch.
An Apple Watch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we did broaden the policy. It doesn't say the student cell phone policy. It says the student cellular device policy, because I think in the coming years you're going to see students wearing all kinds of internet-enabled devices.
Okay.
In fact, we maybe maybe should say wireless instead of just cellular, but.
All right. Any other questions or concerns?
I have several, of course. Sorry, Tim.
No, you're good.
In section 6, line B, where you have the language about the building principal shall contact local law enforcement representatives, et cetera, how does this mesh with the new juvenile justice changes?
That is a great question.
That
we'll review that.
Requires anything below
Class B misdemeanor
to be taken care of at the school that we can't contact. I just wondered how that falls in that.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out and see. That's a good catch, and make sure we're in compliance there. It really depends on the charge a lot. If there's transmission of childhood pornography, that amplifies things up quite a bit. That's why we want to be fairly stern. Kids can get themselves in a lot of trouble really fast by using their cell phones to transmit any of those types of images. But let me look into that a little further. It's a great idea.
My other question, when, I don't know why, but Kevin was reading over my shoulder, and since we're both swimming officials, cameras in locker rooms is a big issue there. Mm-hmm. And in this policy, it only mentions cellular cameras. So my question is, wouldn't we want to ban all cameras from any locker rooms or other private spaces?
Let me go back to the acceptable use policy that all students sign and see if there's any language in there, because we were trying to keep this confined to cellular devices and not any device, where the appropriate use policy covers other types of devices, because you can get into lots of different types of other devices. So let me look at our acceptable use policy and see how we address that.
Okay. Just for example, the clause we have to use on every swimming swim meet sanction is use of audio or visual recording devices, including a cell phone, is not permitted in changing areas, restrooms, or locker rooms.
Will you send that to me?
So,
Okay.
So then my other question that we've run into at swim meets is drones with cameras on them. And that's not a cellular device, but what policy would you put that in?
We've actually started some discussions about this recently because, in fact, Mike brought it up in his last secondary principals meeting with regards to drones because the FAA has some very specific policies when it comes to drone use. And so I know Mike is addressing that with school principals as far as that goes. There's a lot of drones that are being built inside of our schools in maker spaces and that type of thing, and then flown. There's rules with regards to where you can fly those devices, and over crowds are prohibited and that type of thing. So
Okay.
I think he's looking into that.
Okay.
Tim, if we change, it says students who choose to bring cellular devices to school do so at their own risk. The school district assumes no liability for lost or stolen devices. Couldn't we just add or damaged? Doesn't that get away from what Jeff was asking?
I'm not sure that's,
I think it was, if we took it and it was in our care and it was, well, I'll have to ask some legal advice, but I would assume if it could be documented, they handed it to us in a working condition and we handed it back in some kind of damaged position, we would probably be responsible, but I'm just guessing. And I don't think there's any language that could get us out of, but I'll check.
Because we wouldn't know if it was in working condition when we got it, really.
Please notice too, and the committee went over this in that language. This is on the disciplinary measures. It says may result. This was just some guidelines. We found across our school, if we had some just kind of amplification consequences, first thing is to ask you to put it away nicely. Second thing is to take it till the end of the class. Third thing is to keep it till the end of the day. I found in all my experience, I never got a cell phone in the front office, and I kept a list of that I ever saw again from a student. Once you kind of let them know what the expectations were, I found students 99% of the time were very respectful once they understood the expectation was to keep them off and put away during class.
Great.
Gary, I think, had a comment.
Oh.
I was part of this committee, but I really like Roger's comment. It may not protect us being liable as a district employee who takes it home, but I think it might not hurt to put that damage in it, because if that phone gets damaged by another student, they may try to hold us liable, and
I agree.
be liable for that, or should we?
Yeah, I like that as well.
We'll check into those areas.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. All right. Alan, board committee reports.
I sent an email out to everybody. I hope everybody got it on that, of what happened there. One of the biggest issues we're dealing with right now is that it will be required to have cooling tubs in all our high schools, and I think we all do. I think we have 2 of them now, or 2 per building. And the reason for that is during the heat, if somebody gets heat stroke, it's very important to cool and then transport, not transport and cool. And so we're working with the MTs to make sure when they come, EMTs, to make sure when they come that they follow that procedure. So that's what we're doing. But I send out an email to everybody with those notes.
Was that this afternoon?
No, that was after we talked in that meeting. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think
Sunday.
I got it.
maybe Sunday, I got it.
I know you
Oh, I
did.
got it.
Okay.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. Okay, I am going to go ahead and do the board president report, even though we're running a little bit late today.
Kathy, could I give
Oh,
a
yeah.
short report? I've talked with some of you, but I think you all need to be aware. We've suspected for some time there was a problem with policies being placed in the board policies. And the superintendent went to the classified employees barbecue and in the course of things discovered that there are several years apparently that things have been passed by the board but have never been entered officially into the policy manual. And they luckily have kept things in a notebook and have a record with revision dates and such. And we're hoping that maybe the certified will also have something of that type. But I have asked Jen and Tim to move forward in transferring and getting those things up to date on the website, and I just wanted you all to be aware of that. I don't think there's any concern on anyone's part, is there? We certainly want things to be up to date and where they should be.
Those things should all be able to be verified by Dale, though. He
Right.
should have, I mean, it might take him a while, but they're there.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't anticipate any issues.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Okay, thanks.
You're doing a great job on the policies, and our tech people are doing a great job trying to get this all straightened and out and cleaned up so that we actually have the policies that reflect what we are practicing in the district. So appreciate all of that work very much. Just a couple of things. I would like to find out for sure who's going to the fall regional meeting so I can let Carolyn know, because she's ordering food for that. So Dale, are you planning to go to that? Okay, and Steve?
Yes, sir.
And Alan?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take care of that. The second thing is the legislative visits. Everybody got their invitation to that and their assignment for that. And if you're unable to make it to the school, you pretty much let me know already who could and who couldn't. But if something changes, let me know. And if you're not able to make it to the visits to the school, but you can make it to the luncheon is at 12 here. So I would just need to know that information as well.
Have assignments been made? Because
Yeah, they have. It came through email from Carolyn.
Gosh, I have a question on that.
Okay.
I have yet to see my representative in this valley, and he's who I'm assigned to visit with.
He did actually send information to Carolyn saying he would like to come. He will come.
Okay.
And he would like to go to the schools that he's over.
Okay.
So
if he doesn't show, I still go to those schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we'd like to have happen as well is we'd like you to let us know if some of you aren't going to be there. We wouldn't want to work for a legislator to show up without someone there. So we have district office staff. It wasn't on the invitation, or maybe it was put on there, but that will be kind of filling in as well. So that we'll be able to help us,
Okay. Can we let you know right now? Because Randall had a conflict, so, right, you couldn't go. And Larry, you're going to be there? It's just
I should be there.
I'll be there.
And I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
And Terry will be there. So it would be just Randall that's unable to because of work responsibilities.
I'm working.
Okay, Randall, can you come to the luncheon? Did you find out? Okay, all right. Okay, so then the last thing, this was one of the things that was on our list on how to advocate better for our district. And if you'll go to the last page, well, on the back side of the page, here's our board goal, which we haven't approved yet. But it was one that we talked about in June. The Cache County Board of Education will work to improve relationships with local and state leaders to better promote the programs of the district and to effectively communicate needs. So that was one of our goals, was to be able to advocate better for our district with the legislators. And then I've just included a couple of comments, a couple of quotes up at the top, which Jenda helped me research. Well, she didn't help me, she did the research for it. And I just copied it of what our responsibilities are as board members. And I just want to read these really fast because I think we all ought to hear them together. Board members serve as a link between the organization and its members, stakeholders, constituents, or client. They should think of themselves as an organization's ambassadors and advocates. And then the second one, advocacy is a powerful way to leverage the important mission work that your organization does in your community. Board members, as influential community leaders, can help increase the likelihood of your districts, I replaced districts with what they had, success by engaging in advocacy. So that is part of our role as a board, to advocate for the district. And then if we'll just take time to go over this little third section, We need to look for every opportunity to share the good news about our cause. We all can't do all of these, but we each can do something. And so that's how I would like you to look at it. What could you do? And here's the suggestions. Be present and involved in community meetings and gatherings. Reach out personally to employees to recognize and congratulate them. Everybody's got the note cards, so use them up. We'll get you more. Share news stories on our social media page. You'll need to check with Tim or Jenda on this. Spread the message throughout your community. Attend the legislative school visits and luncheon on October 25th. Attend the Day on the Hill at Utah Capitol Building. Do you know that date, Terry, when that is?
Off the top of my head, no, but
Okay.
I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Attend the Saturday morning's legislature report meetings, and we'll make assignments so everybody gets a chance to go do that. And then know your mission statement, vision statement, 30-second statement, and other facts, and then they're listed right there. Okay, so some of the other facts which I emailed to you, we did change number 2 because it wasn't accurate, and Dell said that this one is accurate. The assessed value of property taxes per student in the Cache School District is the 4th lowest in the state of Utah. So if you have patrons who are complaining about their taxes and how much we're spending on education, there's a few things there that you could pass along to them to help inform them.
Kathy,
And then,
Kathy,
yes.
I would say that the assessed value of property taxes isn't the correct phrase either.
Oh, okay, what should it be?
The assessed valuation of, or assessed value of taxable property would be the best way to say it.
Okay. I will give this to, I'll make the corrections, and if you see anything else that need to be corrected, let me know, and then I'll give it to
Jenda's
Karen.
sitting right here, so
So she can have it?
she can make the changes.
Okay, and just get it on our board docs. I'll just give you a copy of this then, Jenda, okay? Get it on our board docs, so we'll have it there. And then she found some advocacy resources for the board members, and then on the back, if you really want to go the extra mile, there's the Utah State Board of Education meeting schedule. So, any questions or concerns? That's one area where we were a little bit weak. And so.
I can give you those dates.
Okay.
The USBA Legislative Day on the Hill is February 16th, which is a Friday.
Okay.
The very next Friday, on the 23rd, is District Schools Day on the Hill, which would be really great if we could send some sort of representation.
Okay. And that.
Gary and Mike carry that message because we didn't do anything last year, and all it amounts to is taking our best programs down and having them available that day. Doesn't have to be anything more than the best, something from our elementary and something for our secondary, something like that.
Yeah, and I personally would appreciate it because I just got put on that committee.
All right, and anyway, anything we can do to help, we're happy to do that. Some of us have a little more discretionary time than a lot who work. So, we'll help you if you need anything. Okay, Superintendent. All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll say.
Before we go to Steve, may I just ask a question? We met in the Human Sexuality Committee today, and there's a new maturation film for the girls. And the committee's looked at it. We don't see any problem with it. But we should pass that as a board before they show that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
Tim can bring that back as part of curriculum.
Then, do you want me to have Heidi send that to each board member so that we can look at that?
Probably be good.
And then let's get it on the agenda and get that passed.
Yep.
Okay.
Getting a lot of sex education in the next coming months because that's required now by state law. The board passes human sexuality curriculum, and we'll try to do that in.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say test. Okay. Steve.
Okay, just some quick items. I too like to thank the PIO office and all that they have done and added to our district. It's just absolutely wonderful and so advantageous to our district to have them organized as they are. And so thanks. Appreciate all you do. I don't know, we had one little item tonight, the data governance. And when Tim went through that, he pointed to 4 separate individuals that were helping implement that in our district. And I just got thinking about my wonderful friends who are in tiny districts who have nobody to pass anything anywhere, so that everything that comes across your desk, I had that experience at Westside, you have nobody to pass anything to. Everything that comes, you have to figure out some way to get it completed. And we got a good friend over in Bear Lake who's in that situation, and it's just nice to have quality people here to help with everything that's required to run a district. I think you've seen tonight just the back shop of what happens to run a district. This stuff never gets out in front of the public, and we've just got a lot of wonderful, marvelous people. Then I also want to thank the parents and the teachers who came tonight. Deciding what to teach in America has been in the history, and I used to teach the class History of Education in America over at Utah State. From the time we organized public schools, people have sat around in discussions just like this, trying to decide what they wanted their kids to know. And it's always an important discussion to have, and it's always gut-wrenching because one person's absolute is another person's elective, okay? So as we go through this process, just recognize, yeah, I remember saying that I wouldn't mind it coming here, but it's here, and we'll make some decisions, and everybody won't be happy. You just need to understand that. That just comes with the territory, okay? We were called down to testify Tuesday in front of a legislative committee, and Representative Dan McKay likes to refer to it as welcome to the witness stand, and we're going to grill you. And the topic was they wanted 2 districts to explain how they were able to raise beginning teacher salaries, and they wanted 2 districts to explain why they were not able to. In essence, 2 districts, Jordan being the main player in this because they were the first, gave a wonderful presentation and spent a couple of years studying how they could raise salaries for teachers and had a whole bunch of input. And it was a wonderful discussion to learn until you got to the end. And at the end, we found out that they had decided as a district that one way they could be more competitive was to use one-time money for ongoing expenses. And they have a huge ending fund balance, but just the fact that we were able to follow up and indicate that we were able to do what we did and that we spent no one-time money on ongoing expenses and did it so that it doesn't affect anything that we're going to have to worry about next year or 10 years down the road. Doesn't matter how long you put that off, one day it's going to come. And so the fact that you've given guidance, and Dale has led our district for many, many years with wonderful financial advice, we were able to go down there and even though we're the fourth lowest market value district in order to raise taxes, we were able to go down there and tell them that without anything other than good WPU allotment from the legislature and the opportunity of participating in equalization programs to the fullest extent, and that takes some effort to do that because you can fall behind very quickly. And you do have to ask our taxpayers in order to be able to do that. But that investment of taking advantage of every part of the equity plan in the state really is very, very advantageous to our public. And it's awful hard to get that message out that we invest $1, we get $2 back in return, so to speak. And so sometimes you sit here and listen to the public, criticize for raising taxes, but it's always been for the benefit of our kids. And then to go down there as that end of the spectrum in funding and be the highest performing district in the state, that was a nice feeling that day. And so just want to thank you and for all those out there and all the teachers and staff members and parents of this district. This is a great time to be in this district. So that's it.
I agree. I think we have a great district staff, great superintendent and assistant superintendents, deputy superintendents. And we did actually forget to thank the district people for one thing, which was seeing that all of that construction took place and happened and was completed. And
yeah,
we want to say thank you for that, because that was a big project. We just have cash high left,
yep.
right? And then it will be completed. But man, that was a big undertaking, and it was done very well. And those high schools are beautiful and very functional.
And one other thing, thanks for going to leadership training. Neither Dell nor I could go with you, and you still went.
While
And
the cat's
probably
away,
had-
the mice will play.
Probably had a better time than when we were there with you. So thanks a lot.
And thanks to our board. You know, each person on this board has a unique talent that brings to the group. Yeah. And I was just reading a book called When Breath Becomes Air. Have any of you heard about that? And I should have brought the quote, but the fellow who wrote it was a neurosurgeon, and he was dying of brain cancer. And he said in his life he realized that it wasn't just what he did, but the sum of everybody that was involved in his life was what made everything complete. And that's kind of how I feel about this board. Everybody brings a special talent to this board, and I appreciate it very much. And, you know, I think we stepped things up a little bit, and we all have our talents that we can use wherever, and I do appreciate that. So
one other thing, I've decided I'm never writing another piece of anything and giving it to this board. I'll run it through agenda. And
you better get that code right.
Yeah. She checks the codes, I check the conventions.
So I have a question. Who's doing Mike, are you doing the school trust land fund training next week at the 2 schools, right?
Okay. Oh, yes, thanks for reminding us of that.
I don't want to do it.
Please
I'll come,
those.
but I won't do it.
But that was one of the requirements that we met.
Yeah, you've met it.
Down there.
Yeah.
But I'll still come.
Yeah, but if you can, come, be supportive, okay? It'll be presented at both ends of the valley.